Hi, this is Pearl Bertrand in Salt Lake City, Utah, and I am recording this message 2018 for Light Language Conference. And I am going to speak about wands and staffs and magic. So, I have been a wand maker since 2007. I went to, my girlfriend had a little wand that was given to her by one of her daughters that had 7 chakra crystals on it. My higher self said, you could make a better one than this. And so I started to make some wands, and I'm showing you a few of them now. And later in the presentation, I will show you some others. So these wands that I started to make were awesome. Like, I was so pleased that I got to experience looking at them, looking at that one, and then discovering, oh, I could make this. So the first one I made was out of ceramics. So I went to go buy some stoneware clay, and I rolled it out, and it might have been 30 inches long. It had a spherical rose quartz at one end and an awesome, amazing quartz crystal point at the other end. And then I carved it. You're not seeing it here. I'll have to show it to you later. I carved it, and it was, let's see, maybe I can show it to you. That's the trouble with, oh, here it is. Okay, so I am now switching to a different screen to show you that crystal. Here it is. Sorry, wand. This was the first wand that I ever made. It is about 30 inches front to back. It's called the Maiden Castle wand because I carved it to look like a castle you could see from, the little carvings in there, and I painted it. It had a chrysocolla little crystal on it. It had the quartz point, the rose quartz sphere. It had a piece of unakite on it. It had an amethyst turtle back. So a turtle with an amethyst for the shell. This, I borrowed her little tiny wand, and this is what it turned out to be. So at that point, I gave it to her. It also had a turkey feather on it and some leather. I carved near the top Espavo, and it was just awesome. She loved it, and I was so happy. So that began my journey, if you will, my journey with creating wands. So at that point, I made possibly, how many did I think I made? I must have made 10 or 15 with 10 or 15 wands that were made out of ceramic, this stoneware ceramic that I bought. So you see in this picture, here's a wand. It's called the Midnight Moon wand. And then this wand is called the Third Eye wand. And Richard has that wand at his place. And a Wiccan gal bought this from me. And this wand, if you're looking at my pointer, I hope that's working. This gray color had with a crystal. Let me get what that one is. Okay, I am a little fumbling around. I have information in various spots, and so I'm just finding the, oh, here it is. Okay, so I'm telling you about the wand. It's called the Creativity Wand. This is the gray wand. It has an awesome point crystal that is got chlorite in it, and a obsidian sheen crystal, spherical crystal at the top. This one is probably 28 inches long. It's pretty long. What I'm going to do now is explain a little bit about wands and staffs and scepters, also sometimes called staves. So in ancient times, like going back maybe as far as, since I'm just purveying this information, there was a shepherd's staff used by shepherds in the field. And that particular type of staff had a couple of purposes. So when I talk about a staff or a wand or a scepter, I'm kind of talking about the same thing, because the it's a rod. So back in biblical times, a rod was a staff, but a shorter one was a scepter, and a even shorter one is a wand. Staffs being really long, scepters being not as long, and then wands being less so. So the purpose of that staff for the shepherd, which may or may not have had a crook in it, was that it gave a longer arm or a longer reach to the shepherd. So when he wanted sheep to move along, for example, or go into this pen or that pen, he could just extend his now longer arm to the sheep to help them move along, steer them in a direction that he wanted them to go. So the long arm also, the second purpose in this staff or wand or scepter is that it was said to give you power. So back in the biblical times, when Moses was exiting out of Egypt, he and his brother had a rod, a staff, and they utilized these rods and staffs for actually and they were endowed with miraculous power during those plagues in Egypt. So it was an emblem of authority, and they did magical things according to the biblical account there. So also the staff was described as being a stick, so it was wooden, and it was in length approximately 5 to 6 feet. Later, or possibly similar time frame, there was a scepter. So I've described a staff or a rod as being 5 to 6 feet, and a scepter was considerably shorter. So it could have been anywhere from 4, 3, 2 feet, something like that. And it had its origin in the shepherd's rod, and because of that, kings were considered to be shepherds of their people. So that scepter or rod of the king became the symbol of power and authority vested in the king. So it was thy rod and thy staff denoted divine truth and good, which actually have power. So a rod of iron would then denote the power of spiritual truth in those times. And because the staff represented the power of truth, that is, the power of good through truth, the kings had scepters. When it became a king's scepter, it it moved into metals or precious metals with jewels and gems, because they were then carried by the king. And you'll notice that in these pictures that I'm showing you, the kings had a scepter and a crown and whatever that is. I can't remember. So the scepter is a little bit shorter than an actual staff or rod. And they all had them. So if it had metal or if it had wood, it was still decorated and ornamented with precious stuff, metals and gems and jewels, like the crown jewels, naturally. Okay, so men had these. So you see these are scepters, and they're not as tall as a rod or a staff, still very tall. And this guy has two of them. They all have meaning somewhere, but I don't know what it all is. I'm just showing you. And ladies had them. Also monarchs. So that's that. So it's a symbol of strength, mystery, and authority. And so for that reason alone, it is a magical possession. And even though I or you may not be a monarch, we are a monarch in our own right, in our own way. And so the energy of the staff or scepter or wand is awesome, awesome and amazing. Okay, how did you like that? Yay. What I'd like to do now is to show you some of the wands that I have made and describe them a little bit. So let me do that by sharing a screen. Okay, what you're seeing now is on my Facebook. On my Facebook, there is an album called The Wand Factory, or maybe it's just Wand Factory. In this album, I have a number of wands that I have created. And so I'm showing you some of those now. This is called, was a ceramic wand, and it's called the Midnight Moon Wand. And I usually make these. So when I was making ceramic wands, this is before I got to wood, because I felt like I wasn't really a wood expert, and I never took shop in school the way all of my brothers did. And my father was this expert woodworker. And so before I got to starting on wood, I simply made what I knew, which was ceramic. So this one represents that. This Midnight Moon wand is, it's got a lapis lazuli sphere, really pretty. And on the other end that you can't see very well unless I move over to a different screen. Let me show, oops, that's the one I did before. Okay, so this is the lapis lazuli that you can see. It had an indent that I put there so it easily went and glued in there. And then the crystal that was on the end is a scepter crystal. It's amazing. It was amazing. It's not mine anymore. And I painted it blue and tinted it, and it was absolutely beautiful. And a gal bought it who was in Colorado near Denver. And when she held it, she said it just vibrated, and she bought it and loved it. Honestly, it was awesome for her. Okay, So the next one I'm showing you is, this is a black tourmaline wand. It has, it was ceramic. It was very short, and it had a double terminated crystal in the on the other end. And it was so powerful that the gal who ended up buying it, I put it in her hands and it blew her back. So it was totally her wand. And she bought it. Okay. This, as I mentioned earlier, it is now with Richard Gordon. He was a guest teacher in Dimensional Mastery that I took in 2015. And he, I let him pick. There was a couple of wands, a few wands that I brought with me, and 2 or 3 were left, and he chose this one. It's called the Third Eye Wand. It has a carnelian agate. Scolecite is that center eye. And as a matter of fact, this carnelian agate has a marking on the sphere that looks like an eye. And then on the peacock feather, you know, they always look a bit like an eye as well. So it also had a crystal, a quartz crystal on the end. And it was just so good for grounding into this dimension, the energy of the third eye. This is called the Wisdom Scepter. And this is made with a chrysocolla sphere. Smoky quartz with amazonite is the point crystal, and it's not a really straight, perfect point crystal. It had some stuff on the end of it, the amazonite, and so I had to carve a niche in the end of that piece of wood for it to go there. And it also had these 3 little caboncite stones in there too, and it had a heron feather on it. A piece of copper I draped here, I bent here. This is a septarian grounding wand. It's got my favorite, a septarian sphere crystal on the end of it. So I am totally in love with the septarian. They are from Utah as well. And it had this amazing crystal that had so much density and so much interesting things inside of it. It had so many energies from all the things that I could see inside of it. And then it had also a pheasant feather from a piece of driftwood at Quail Creek Reservoir in southern Utah. So yeah, I tend to find wood now at the strangest locations. So one day I'm riding down the road, and I'm near St. George, Utah, and I get this pull off here. So I pulled off, and then what's this? A reservoir. So I just get out and go walking along the beach of the reservoir, and there's these pieces of wood that start talking to me. Like, I want to go home with you. I want to be a wand, as if they knew they could be a wand. So they apparently knew they could be a wand, and so they're speaking, and I'm picking them up and taking them home. That's how this one became a wand. Actually, it's a scepter because it's a little bit bigger. This is really nice. This is called the Abundance Scepter. It is also ceramic, and it had just the clearest, they're not clear, but I mean, for me, they were all really clear crystals about who of them wanted to go on this one. And there's a sphere, there's a pyramid under this flap. So I just created a no connection here in the ceramic piece, and built and pulled up this part. On the inside of this wand is painted gold. On the outside is painted pearlescent. So they're acrylic paints. And the scepter quartz point. So down at the bottom here is a scepter again, another scepter crystal. And the sphere is a Lemurian seed sphere. And then of course the pyramids crystal here. This was such an amazing wand. And the minute I showed it to somebody, they wanted to have it, so they bought it. It didn't stick with me very long, but it sure was pretty. This particular wand is made of kola wood, and the kola wood comes from cactus. So a dead cactus would have this kind of wood in it. And the sphere is just one sphere at the top. And at the bottom, there are these 2 point crystals, because at the bottom of this particular piece of wood, there were two holes that were there. That so I plugged it. I plugged them with crystals, and it turns out that this particular wand was from the Pleiades. It was a Palladian wand. I don't quite know how that happened here on the planet, but it was a Palladian wand, and it had a lot of magic and a lot of power to it. And a gal who's a counselor bought it, and she didn't know why she bought it. She just felt like she needed to have it, and subsequently asked, how do I use this, etc. I can't tell others how to use their wands or how to use crystals for them. I can just in general say, this is what you can do with a wand, and this is how it works. But as you have and create and or possess a wand, you work with it, and it assists you to know how to use it. That's probably the best I can say. It's your magic that infuses it, and then you can use it from then on. This little wand, you can't really tell, but right here is a face and little ears. It's a fox. It looked like a fox, an absolute fox. And so I called this the fox wand. This is also a piece of driftwood. And it looked like a fox. That was so amazing. And so at the top here is a malachite sphere, and at the bottom is a point crystal with chlorite inclusions. It's really pretty, and it matches kind of with this ruby and zoisite. It's very pretty. And a guy bought it. I didn't think he was that magical, but they go to who they're supposed to go to, unless whoever gets it is just purveying it to another. Oh, this is called the S wand. Now, this is a wand whose wood came from Sedona, Arizona. And one day I was in Sedona, Arizona with a retreat group, and I got sick, and I had a really high temperature. And as I'm going forward into one of the last vortexes that we traveled into, I had a temperature. I'm just walking through, and a little piece of wood, this one and a couple of others, they said, "Can you take me home?" And I at first I thought, am I really, what? And then the buddy that I was with, I asked her, you know what? There's a piece of wood over here that says it would like to go home with me. And am I supposed to, can I take that home? And her response was, it asked you if it wanted to go home with you? I said, yeah, it asked. Am I allowed to take it? And so she said, if it wants to go home with you, then you take it. So I picked it out of the ground, which it looked a little bit like it had been stamped in the ground, so I had to pull it out. And it looked like it was burnt. It had kind of dark charcoal look on it. I thought, wow, that is an ugly stick. And it had a curve in it. I didn't care. I took it home because it wanted to go. And when I finally got around to working on it and getting off the black and stuff, it was so amazingly gorgeous. And because it was in a curve, like in its juniper, so it was in a curve, because that's a lot of how juniper works. It's all twisty and stuff. And it just was beautiful. So I had this amazing time putting some crystals on it, and uh, a cavensite, an agate sphere, smoky quartz is on that point near the what looks like the nose of it, and ruby and zoisite again. It was amazing. And yes, sticks talk to me. This scepter is called the Sedona scepter. It had one of the most expensive crystal sets that I've ever put on a wand, scepter, or staff. And they had this off the charts, I mean, really off the charts energy. And they all wanted to come together. They all wanted to go together. And there's a piece of copper, and there's also a Herkimer diamond and some hawk feathers. The point crystal is actually a laser crystal. And I think that's what gave it, in combination with the Lemurian seed crystal, such power. I put this on consignment at a crystal and rock shop, or a metaphysical shop. And I asked a whopping, $500 or $600 for it. And one day the guy told me it sold. So somebody knew what they had, I think. It was amazing. Okay, this little wand is called the Wounded Healer Wand, and it has a sphere of jade. And this particular point crystal is just a quartz crystal, but it dropped 2 or 3 times, and I glued it back together, and I glued it back together, and it still insisted, both the crystal and the wand, on having that little broken crystal on it. So that's so I complied, and there it turned out to be the Wounded Healer wand. And a gal I know bought it, and she puts it by her bedside every night. It's amazing. This one I know is in progress, and it's been in progress for a long time. I'm not sure it will ever get done. It's called the Healing Path Wand, and this was a piece of ceramic. Like, it started out as a ceramic wand, and it broke up in the kiln. So I created a seat for the spherical crystal, and a flat seat for the rutilated quartz crystal. And then there were a few others that were on this path here. They're just not shown in this picture. And it's painted. These are not glued. This is not ready yet. So what I gathered from this, and so I made this years and years ago, and it's still alive somewhere downstairs. So it's waiting, and I'm waiting. And what are we waiting for? I am not sure. So all I can say is I think we're waiting for the owner to be ready. And probably when that happens. So if any of you are seeing this and this is your wand, be sure to let me know. I will have posted my email and phone number here. This is the Blue Amethyst wand. This is now owned by Dr. Susan Rossi, and it's kyanite, ruby and kyanite sphere crystal, and an amethyst point crystal made out of ceramic. And it's been in her Rossi Chiropractic Center for at least 3 years now. or so. Amazing. Now I'm going to show you a few other staffs, and then I'm going to tell you how you can charge your staff, wand, or scepter, or the crystals, or anything. This is called the Crenshaw wand. It actually is a very energetic wand, and it has a little face carved in it. Not a lot of carving, but it looked like a face, so I wanted to turn it into a face. And you see it, this Tibetan quartz crystal had a hitchhiker right there. It was awesome. This is the desktop that I was telling you about. It's a ruby and zoisite and then a point quartz crystal. And it had feathers hanging off. This is really pretty. It's, I called it the merge wand because it was being used for merging from one thing into another. And I made a strap so it could go over your shoulder. It has turquoise embedded and these awesome crystals. It was just so pretty, and that's diamond willow wood, which I adore diamond willow wood. If I could make all the wands and staffs out of diamond willow, I would, and I've made quite a few out of it. This is the Traveler's Wand. This was made for Jody Sirota specifically, and Star actually gave me the ingredients she could see being on it, and so I made it in just that way. And it usually has this gyroscope hanging off of it. Or it could have the gyroscope hanging off of it. Anyway, Jody loved it. Oh, staffs now. Okay, I'm moving on to staffs. There's only a few of these, so if you were getting bored for this show and tell, good. The next is yet to come. Okay, so this is the caretaker's staff, and the caretaker's staff is really amazing. Oh, this is one. This is the Desert Lodestar staff. This is owned now by my quantum NLP teacher, Christiana Turner. And it's probably stands 6'2" or 3. And she's about 6'1", 6 foot or 6'1". And she adores it. It has a prominent place in her home. And it had a medicine bag pouch that I made for it. This is just one of my favorite staffs. One of my favorite creations. Also, diamond willow. You can tell the diamonds there. And they're darker. They just end up darker. They're not colored or anything, painted or anything. It's just beautiful. And here's a close-up of the turquoise, inlaid turquoise that I, crushed turquoise that I inlaid. And her bag that has specific stones in it and a little pheasant feather. This staff is the King Anthem staff. And it's highly decorated too. This one has a little shadow face in it and a little bag with tiger eye all around, spherical tiger eye all around this particular part. And it's owned by, yes, Conna Teagan, my business partner. Looking good, Conna. Okay, this is the master's staff. It's just called the master's staff. And this was given to Star Fuentes in 2015 when I went to Dimensional Mastery. This is Moksha Shakti, really decorated really well. Some of it was left virgin, and some of it with bark and everything, and some of it was cut, shaved and dressed up. This is Zion, the Zion staff. And it has a crystal on the top of his head. And there it is, and a little face. And some of it you see still has its bark here with a copper plate. It's awesome, amazing. I love show and tell. And often I get asked, well, can I see them? Can I see your wands and staffs and scepters? So I'm going to show you where you can see some of them. Like I said, one place you can see them is on my Facebook. One of the photo albums I have on Facebook is called Wand Factory. Okay, so the other place I'm going to show you now is on Pinterest. So on Pinterest, I have 3 different boards. One of the boards is called Wands by Pearl. You can see that here. And it just has pictures of the wands that I've made. And so for me, these wands are smaller than staffs and smaller than scepters. And I've attempted to photograph and display them well. And you can look at them there. So Wands by Pearl on Pinterest. The other place you can see is Staffs by Pearl, also a board on my Pinterest page. And I think my Pinterest page is Academy of Energy Healers. So there you can see, I guess I don't have all the staffs that I've done on there, but there they are. And then the third place is Scepters by Pearl. So then you can see the ones that are scepters. I haven't added to these in quite a while, so I apologize about that. All right. Let's see. I'm going to stop sharing that now. Ah, good, back. Okay, so the next thing I would like for you to know is how once you have, oh, wait, no, that's not it. I'm showing you my scepter. And this scepter, I really haven't named. So when I first built it, it was out of a piece of wood that was, that I got as a piece of driftwood. And you can tell just by looking that I have put a septarian sphere on it. And it's not insubstantial, and this is a heavy scepter. And I have not highly decorated it either. So you can see that it's got, you know, some little animals that have eaten away on it. It's not actually a really too finished. I did put some oil and stuff on it. And what this is, this point crystal comes from Russia, I think it was. I bought it at a gem fair, and it's an anhydro. So I know you won't be able to see where it is. I'm not sure I can see where it is either. But there's a floaty water. Some water's in there somewhere floating around. And I have to move it certain ways for you to be able to see. And in this moment, I'm not able to show you, but it had all these cool inclusions. It is just a magnificent point crystal. It's not a scepter, but it's just awesome. Okay, so when I first built this particular, I called it a wand back then, but it's much too big to be a wand. It had so much male energy in it, like an inordinate amount for me. So once it was built, then I left it to, I didn't visit it or talk to it or work with it. I just left it alone so that the male energy would calm down, which it has. It's probably time for me to decorate it a little bit, or maybe a lot. So I go to gem fairs, I go to rock, rock this and rock that, and I buy spheres and point crystals typically. And one of the reasons I do that is because they're the stones, crystals are resonating with me. So if that's the case, then they're not talking to me the way wood does, but then I take them home and they're going to go to a good use. So that's what I'm thinking about it. And then they come together later. It's an amazing process. So I used to just build them because I was a maker, a creator, and I just put them together, and I loved it. I get excited about it. And now I honestly don't have the time the way I did before, or I'm not taking the time the way I did before. And so now I have taken Star's wand magic class, and I have taken her crystalline class and certified there. So I have this background now that is so much more immense than I used to have when I originally started out. So now I only build staffs, scepters, and wands for a custom orders. So if I built one now, it's specifically for someone, and I'm probably 15 down the line. I have a list going, so I'm behind on my list of building staffs, scepters, and wands. But I love it. I just love it. It's hard to explain the magic that's here and the intuitiveness of them. Back when I first started building them, like I showed you the Maiden Castle wand. After that, I just built a lot of them. And they were downstairs in my living room. And the energy of them made my head swim. That's how powerful they were. That's how powerful they were. And eventually I got used to it, and eventually they didn't make my head swim anymore. And I could have a whole bunch of them in the same room, and now I'd be just fine with them. But they're these unique power tools. And I'm saying power tools, and I mean it. How do you charge a magical object like a wand, like a staff, or a scepter? So infusing our objects with magical intentions is all that's needed. And it's like praying on our food to infuse it with, good intentions. So we charge them. We can just infuse them with what we want in them. And so the same for our magical tools, our wands, our staffs. And so it's our intention and what our thoughts are, because our thoughts are very powerful. And so we have that opportunity to infuse our magic wand and infuse our magic scepter and infuse our magic staff. So my main message is the scepter, the staff, and the wand are power and authority in your own right, in your own sovereignty. So it would be awesome to have one. And it's also an extension of your arm to have it, so that you have a wider reach. That's magical. I once took some training here in Salt Lake with a group, and in the higher and advanced training levels, everyone went in search of a staff, and everyone takes their staff to the retreat. My message today is Get yourself a magical wand, scepter, or staff sometime. Go on the search. Have the intention that you are going to find your magical wand, magical staff, or magical scepter. And then do some work. Figure out some crystals that you would want to put on it that have meaning for you. And you can do that kind of research. So there are many ways that you can enhance your tool, your wand, staff, or scepter. They're magical. Who couldn't use magic? That's all I got for you today. It's been a pleasure. Thank you. And contact me if you like. This is Pearl Bertrand in Salt Lake City, Utah, from the Academy of Energy Healers. Bye.